In the previous video, we talked about project lifecycle, or for short, PLC. In this video, you're going to hear another term called DLC. So PLC, DLC, what do these things mean in the project management context? Because I know some of these terms could mean many things outside of project management. Well, we already know the project lifecycle, PLC, is a term we use to reflect the life of a project, concept to closure. Now, this life cycle would be different from one industry to another, even from one organization to another, from one type of project to another. So basically, an IT project in the financial sector might have a certain life cycle. A research pharmaceutical project in the pharmaceutical industry might have a different life cycle. A capital project could have somewhat of a different life cycle. However, the key element to really make it a method is what we said in the previous video. A project life cycle is a must. The project life cycle will be subdivided into phases or stages. They are stage deliverable and they are stage gate. These are, in our opinion, in our professional opinion, the fundamental, essential element that makes a project management method. So let's talk about a project life cycle with some more examples or with an example and with some details. Ideally, a project life cycle should have a concept stage. Now, the name could be different depending on where you are, as we already established. We should have, but in general, there would be a concept stage to define the concept of the project and understand the product that the project is to produce. Ideally, that's the first step. Next step should be to perform a feasibility study to verify that the project is feasible and the organization will be able to deliver it successfully. Then we move on to define the requirement, the business requirement, the high-level requirement, whatever you want to call them. We don't have to get into detailed planning here. In some industry, we have different names for these things, but at least there have to be some kind of a definition of the business requirement that is an elaboration on the, if you wish, the product that we want to produce. Then there is something in the middle. Now, let's keep it that way right now. Something in the middle. And then the last stage would be a close stage. So that would be a life cycle. Concept, feasibility, business requirement, something in the middle, and close stage. Now, what is that something in the middle? Well, that something in the middle could be the work we do, or would be the work we will be doing to produce the output. So that typically is the physical work, the product development work. Yes, before that we plan, we prepare, we analyze, we define. Now we are starting to actually produce the product, whatever that product is. It could be a software, it could be a building. And usually here, where we have different approaches, and when many of the debates that are happening today, we can do the work in the product work, we can subdivide that phase into pieces as well, into sub-phases or sub-stages that would be more or less sequential to produce the output. So maybe one approach is that we are going to produce an output in one bulk. So at the end, we'll have big bang. We'll have one thing, the full product delivered once. And to do this, we usually follow a sequential process, such as we plan, we design, we build, we hand over. Maybe we commission, depend again what industry you are in, the terminology might be different. So there is a bit of a sequence, and what some people call that is a waterfall, but really is not necessarily a waterfall, because in waterfall the idea is that each stage must be completed before the start of another. However, in general, in real life, some of these stages are overlapped. So basically what we prefer, we don't like to use the word waterfall. What we say is there is a sequential process that could be hard, broken like a waterfall, or it could be overlapping. Now, how much of an overlap? It depends again on the industry. Remember, it depends. Everything, it depends. So the approach we're talking about here is that to produce the output in one bulk. The other approach, and if it is possible, depending on the industry you are in, is what we call incremental, or iterative would be something similar, except the product would be different. In an incremental approach, we will follow the same thing. We follow like analysis, plan, design, develop, build, handover, release, whatever the terminology. So we still have a sequence, but instead of doing that sequence on the full product, we do it on piece by piece by piece. So we take the first piece of the product, whether it being a mini product, a feature, a minimum viable product, a prototype, whatever you want to call it, yeah, we'll do the first piece, following that process. Or to produce a chunk of the big product. Then we repeat the process, we repeat it, we repeat it, we repeat it until all the pieces are complete, and then we have the full product. Now, so time-wise, it still takes time. It's not faster like some necessarily say. It's just different that you are producing the product, the output in pieces instead of one release. So you do multiple releases over time. And that is today what we call incremental. It could be iterative. And ideally, these are principles related to agile. So when people say agile today, they are usually meaning this kind of development. Now, whether you use Scrum or Kanban or whatever else method they are used, that's a different. Those are, or method or approaches or framework that will be used to produce those things is different. However, the key concept here is, are we going to produce the project in one bulk or previous bulk? Now it's time to talk about DLC. Remember what we said, we have a PLC that have concept, feasibility, requirements, something in the middle, and close. And we define that something in the middle as a product development work that could be done in one piece or in chunks. That something in the middle is what many references today call it development life cycle. So we have a PLC, which is the project life cycle concept to closure. And then we have the DLC, the development life cycle, if you wish to call it, use that term, which cover a piece. That's important. A piece of the project, which is usually the development piece, the execution work, the implementation stage, whatever term you use. So let me emphasize here, the DLC is a subset of the PLC. Now, keep that in mind as we go into the next video. So, the DLC is for a stage of the project. Clear?